the Empire State, a state that contains one of the most diverse landscapes in America. From the world-famous New York City to the natural wonders of the Great Lakes and Niagara Falls, New York State and its many regions have become a gem to the great American tourism. Hi everyone, I'm Jose and I'm in the Finger Lakes, a region in central New York defined by its natural beauty. The 11 Finger Lakes contain vibrant communities, each with their own stories. On this tour, we'll visit Seneca Falls, the town that became the birthplace for the women's rights movement. Seneca Falls is a small town along Cayuga Lake with historic attractions and beautiful scenery. From Suffrage Park to its iconic moment in Hollywood, this quaint village is a treasure to explore. We'll also experience the natural, beautiful lands of the county. Cayuga Lake is one of the largest bodies of water in central New York, filled with wine trails, outdoor recreations, and a wildlife refuge. The lake also connects to the Erie Canal, which spans across New York State, allowing for navigation to the Hudson River and down to New York City. So let's go on tour to the Finger Lakes and Seneca Falls. The beautiful Cayuga Lake, one of the 11 Finger Lakes that developed more than 2 million years ago during the Ice Age. The Finger Lakes get their name from their unique formation, resembling long, narrow, and elongated human fingers. The Ice Age carved out these U-shaped valleys that filled with the waters melting from the glaciers. The Native American settlers believed the lakes were formed by a great spirit who laid its hands on the land to bless it. Cayuga Lake is named after the Cayuga Nation, members of the Iroquois Confederacy, who used the vital resources to develop their community. Fertile lands that were later connected to the Erie Canal to create the Cayuga-Seneca Canal extension, becoming a pivotal economic driver to the greater state of New York. The Great Cayuga Lake, the longest of New York State's 11 Finger Lakes, with a length spanning 40 miles and a width of 3.5 miles at its widest point. The lake is a dominant force in the Empire State. As turbulent autumn winds rise, they create strong waves on the usually calm waters, marking the seasonal shift across the region. Fishermen bring in their boats, signaling the end of summer in a region that swiftly experiences cooler weather as winds blow down from the Canadian frontier. Our journey takes us along Route 90, which runs straight from the southern to northern tip of the lake, offering a scenic and serene experience through endless mountains, charming villages, wineries, and an unforgettable view of the lake nestled below the valley. This massive body of water can take up to an hour to drive from its northern to southern points. Along the way, you'll encounter numerous outdoor adventures, from state parks to waterfalls. It's a nature lover's paradise. At Long Point State Park, visitors brave the turbulent waters for one last swim before the autumn equinox. Parents watch over their children as youthful laughter and playful sounds compete with the harsh roar of the strong winds. Cayuga Lake has a maximum depth of 435 feet and contains 2.5 trillion gallons of water. During its industrial period, the lake saw commercial transportation on its waters. Horse-powered ferries, steamboats, and freight liners navigated the lake, transporting coal, lumber, and agricultural products from the surrounding lands. These goods were then carried through a network of waterways to various regions within New York State. As I walk along the edges of the state park, I'm enchanted by the beauty and the scenery of this part of the Endless Mountains. I watch a passenger ferry cut through the turbulent waves, the Isle of Skye ferry, a winery tour boat that can carry more than 6 passengers, providing stops and tastings at the many wineries in the county. Cayuga is the only lake in the world that connects you to wineries through a boat tour. As we drive along the lake towards Seneca Falls, we encounter numerous fascinating natural stopping points. The Finger Lakes region is home to thousands of waterfalls, where water flows back into the lakes thanks to the unique glacial topography. Hidden within the forest behind a playground in the town of Lansing, New York, lies the stunning Ludlowville Falls, formed by the waters of Salmon Creek, which flows into Cayuga Lake as a tributary. The creek creates a 35-foot cascading waterfall. The rushing water, meeting the sunny clearing below, forms a rainbow near the base of the falls. Dozens of visitors gather at this amazing outdoor escape to explore the hidden gem of Ludlowville Park. The changing weather doesn't deter them from swimming, fishing, or simply dipping their toes in the water. From below the creek, the scenic waterfall appears like a towering mountain, its thunderous roar drowning out soft-spoken voices. The formation of the waterfall is shaped by Salmon Creek's interaction with limestone, which has deposited massive layers over time, eroding to create the cave beneath the falls, leaving scattered boulders along the creek. During the silent film era of the early 1900s, the waterfall was used as a backdrop in many movies. Just as it once served as a beautiful background for film, musicians have since discovered this stunning wonder for their music videos, filming with their instruments halfway submerged in the creek. The Ludlowville family were early pioneers in the area, building a grist mill to grind cereal grains into flour. They harnessed the power of the waterfall to drive the industry, giving rise to the settlement that would become Ludlowville. Welcome to the town of Seneca Falls, the pioneer to women's rights and the historic gateway to the Finger Lakes. Seneca Falls was incorporated in 1831 after many years of conflict, forced removals, and land treaties with the Iroquois Confederacy. The village grew its industries of mills, hydroelectric power, and agriculture with the help of the Seneca River and nearby waterfalls, expanding the area's population. As new residents entered the region, it became a hotbed for social and religious reform. Seneca Falls operated as a safeway for freedom seekers on the Underground Railroad. The matter of abolition of slavery and temperance to women's rights became some of the most important issues to the village. The small town of Seneca Falls, considered the gateway to the Finger Lakes, holds a significant place in New York State's history. Located just west of the northern tip of Cayuga Lake, it's the largest community in Seneca County, with a population of fewer than 10,000 residents. As I stroll through its downtown, the charming local shops catch my eye. With the summer crowds gone, the calm autumn visitors wander through, exploring the historic trail that leads to one of America's most important movements. At the intersection of Cayuga and South Park Street stands the Sailor and Soldiers Monument, dedicated to the Union soldiers and sailors who fought in the Civil War. It was a gift from the estate of Albert Cook, president of Seneca Falls First National Bank. Seneca County was established in 1804, creating 6 towns: Junius, Fayette, Romulus, Ovid, Hector, and Ulysses, with Seneca Falls branching off from the town of Junius. In a region rich with bodies of water, it was a natural choice to add a marina to the industrial village. The Seneca Falls Harbor, where I passed by the beautiful boats of the locals, is one of the most popular stops along the Erie Canal. The town's location, attractions, and maritime facilities draw yachts from all over as they venture toward the outdoor wonders of Cayuga Lake. In this bustling harbor, boats pass through the Erie Canal waterway, engaging with the picturesque landscapes of the Finger Lakes. The harbor was once a vital piece of the town's economic growth, originally built as a transportation hub to the Erie Canal, which connects to the Cayuga-Seneca Canal, Lock 3. Fleets of boats once carried produce, merchant goods, and coal from Pennsylvania's coal regions through these waters. Now, leisure boats navigate the canal. Travelers embark on their final voyages, bidding farewell to the warm winds of summer and welcoming the cooling onset of autumn. The beauty of life beside such astounding lakes. Seneca Falls is best known as the birthplace of the women's rights movement, and at one of its busiest intersections, we're greeted by the monument commemorating the meeting of Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Stanton would go on to become indispensable leaders of the movement. Stanton, the thinker and writer, crafted the ideas and arguments, while Anthony, the tireless traveler, carried those messages to Congress, conventions, and lecture halls. These powerful leaders played pivotal roles in 2 of America's most monumental movements: the fight for women's rights and the abolition of slavery. This beautiful monument, titled Ripples of Change, is dedicated to all the fearsome leaders who fought for equal opportunity. Harriet Tubman, the former slave who escaped to freedom and became one of the strongest voices of the Underground Railroad, while also advocating for the women's rights movement. Laura Cornelius Kellogg, an activist, poet, playwright, and writer who fought for Native American rights. Martha Coffin Wright, activist to the abolitionist movement and American Anti-Slavery Society, who planned the Seneca Convention. And Sojourner Truth, one of the most famous poets of the women's rights and abolitionist movements, penning the speech, "Ain't I a Woman?" which fought for the case of treating all women, no matter the color, to be equals to that of male citizens. All leaders who brought a revolutionary change to America. The women's rights movement began in Seneca Falls. In July 1848, Elizabeth Stanton and Lucretia Mott held the Seneca Falls Convention and presented the Declaration of Sentiments. This document was modeled after the Declaration of Independence and took inspiration from the Declaration of Sentiments of African Americans. It outlined the social, civil, religious conditions and rights of women that were omitted from the founding documents of a new nation. Frederick Douglass, the father of the abolitionist movement, attended the convention. The only African American and one of the very few men who attended, Douglass showed strong support for racial and gender equality. The women's rights movement continued into the 1920s when the 19th Amendment was ratified, giving women the full right to vote. The Wesleyan Chapel is one of the most important pieces to the women's rights movement. It was at this very location where hundreds of women gathered to listen to Stanton's speech on women's right to vote. America's history has been shaped by protests, advocating for change. In this small chapel in Seneca Falls, a landmark convention reshaped the very foundations of the country. Women's suffrage transcends the borders of America, reflecting a history where democracies often excluded women's contributions to political, economic, and social discourse. Dating back to the early democracies of Greece and ancient Rome, women were denied many rights and privileges we now take for granted. As Lady Liberty watches over the chapel on this plaque, her scales tip toward equality. Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott understood the monumental task they were undertaking when they conceived the idea of a convention, having been excluded from the 1840 World Anti-Slavery Convention. This exclusion became the catalyst for their fight, laying bare the grievances faced by women of their era. A crowd gathered at this chapel to hear the passage of the Declaration of Sentiments, launching a struggle that would last 72 years before women won the right to vote, opening the door to new freedoms for generations to come. The fight for the future, for the generations just beginning their journey, and for the heroes who laid the groundwork for their path. At the Women's Rights National Historical Park, we travel back through history, hearing the voices of the silent minority who persevered through unprecedented challenges. Our tour begins with a timeline of the movement across New York State, tracing the convention's journey to Rochester, where the idea of women's independence took shape. Sojourner Truth is honored here for her poetry and her fight for the inclusion of women of color in the movement. She stands tall in these historic halls, reflecting on the suffrage of women, the anchors of every movement in America's history. From political protests to inclusion in military fields, women have valiantly fought to uphold the ideals of the American Union. When men fought the battles across Europe in the Great War, women made up nearly half of America's workforce, supporting the war effort by building tanks, ships, and artillery, shattering the notion that their skills were limited to a broom. Women became pioneers, as shown in this photograph, entering the medical field, where they continue to battle gender bias. Visitors look back at the originators of this movement, reading the letters of Stanton, which grace the walls of the museum. But the question remains, are things truly so different today? Are the rights women fought so tirelessly for at risk of being taken away? The handshake that changed the course of history, forging a bond for justice, now seems to loosen, threatening the monumental progress in women's rights. Much like the ratified Equal Rights Amendment, where only a portion of the country has committed to its ideals, did these courageous proponents of change fight a cause that would be rolled back a century after its triumph? These monuments reflect hope for a future where women are granted equal rights in a world that doesn't discriminate against American citizens, regardless of gender.
If you're not familiar with Seneca Falls, then you might be familiar with its Hollywood name, Bedford Falls. The iconic Hollywood Christmas story, It's a Wonderful Life, used Seneca Falls as its inspiration. This is a bridge from the movie where Jimmy Stewart contemplated his life's choices.
Our trip to Seneca Falls truly reflects the sentiment that it's a wonderful life. Curious visitors stop for photos at the iconic bridge, made famous by its connection to one of Hollywood's most beloved films. From the stunning attractions and outdoor beauty of Cayuga Lake to the historic challenges memorialized in Women's Rights Historical Park, this town is filled with an aspirational spirit. The Bridge Street Bridge honors the real-life events that inspired the movie's pivotal scene. The plaque tells the story of Ruth Dunham, who jumped into the canal. Her cries for help drew the attention of Antonio Veracali, a nearby worker who, despite not knowing how to swim, bravely leapt to save her. Overlooking the bridge is the Seneca Knitting Mill, a key institution in the small town's history, one of the earliest employers of women and immigrants. It stands as a testament to the hardworking spirit that shaped Seneca Falls.
When I travel to upstate New York, I love to follow the Erie Canal Trail. From Waterford and Albany, across the state to the ends of Buffalo, the canal was one of America's most breathtaking pieces of engineering. The more than 300-mile canal was the economic driver of the Empire State, and you can still find some of its many marvels, like the flight of the 5 locks in Lockport, an amazing system of engineering that disrupted the use of railroads across America. The Erie Canal is considered the most important infrastructure project in American history, creating pathways to the Great Lakes and the Atlantic Ocean.
As we close out our journey, we stop by the famous Erie Canal and the locks of the Cayuga-Seneca Canal Path, where a boat slowly approaches the crossing. The canal engineer checks the passing vessel, preparing the travelers for the shift in elevation. The massive gates of the canal locks begin to open,
And as the water level adjusts, the vessel is carefully guided to the other side. This sophisticated system, now known as the Erie Canal, is credited as one of the most innovative creations in American history. The extension to Cayuga and Seneca connected the towns of Waterloo and Seneca Falls to the rest of the world, opening new opportunities for trade and delivering real-time news from across the country. Even today, the Erie Canal remains an important stopping point in the Finger Lakes. As our travelers depart, they pass through the canal locks with ease, a testament to the marvel of this masterfully constructed system. A system that has stood for 200 years with no signs of slowing down. Now, the oldest surviving form of transportation in all of North America.
The town of Seneca Falls and Cayuga Lake are exceptional points of interest to begin a tour of the Finger Lakes. From its rich history and defining moment with the women's rights movement to its small town charm and wonderful shops, Seneca Falls is a gem to the Finger Lakes region. It complements the beauty and natural surroundings found across Cayuga Lake, creating a postcard image to the pages of New York's tourism. I'm Jose, and I thank you for joining me on this tour of Seneca Falls. Until next time.